And we pick it up with the Falcons, who made easy work of the Seahawks 36-20 and earned their first victory in the playoffs since the 2012 divisional round, which was also versus Seattle. It was not the Legion of Boom's day, allowing the second most points in a playoff game. Max, was this game more about good Falcons or bad Seahawks?
All right, I want Atlanta Falcons fans to listen to me very carefully.
Rise up. I'm
giving you your props, okay? This Falcons defense was non-existent in the beginning of the year. As with several of these playoff teams, they became kind of sneaky good, and the Falcons showed real character against the Seahawks. Look, Devin Hester's, the 79-yard, and then with the penalty, wound up like an 84-yard reversal of fortune, which wound up in a safety and everything. Yes, that helped the Falcons, but whatever. That wasn't the final score of the game. The Falcons, I thought, would lose to a Seattle team because Seattle had been there before. Pete Carroll, you have a great coach. Russell Wilson, a great quarterback. Enough of the Legion of Boom still on defense and all that they would test the Falcons' character. And they did. They did test the Falcons' character. And the Falcons passed it with flying colors. The defense, as I mentioned, come around. But the offense, Stephen A., is one of those greatest show on turf, New Orleans, Drew Brees, you want to say Kurt Warner, Drew Brees led type offense. It just looks, when you're watching it, you go, there's no way to stop this. There are too many weapons and a quarterback playing on too high a level. And to say it was bad, so it's obviously great Falcons. But to say it was bad Seahawks also implies that somehow you were expecting more from the Seahawks. I thought they showed up. I thought they showed up to play. They had not looked good in recent weeks. Their O-line's been a problem all year. And then when Earl Thomas went down, their secondary has really underperformed. That was a huge loss. I can't say you were expecting more from the Seahawks. In the first half, they hung tough. The Falcons were too much. That is an excellent team, which at this point should be favored to go to the Super Bowl.
It's an excellent team, but they were ranked 27th defensively, 28th against the pass, and then they were going up against a Seattle team that didn't have really much to go on, and that's why it's a bad Seattle as far as I'm concerned. That's not to say that Atlanta isn't as good as we think they are, but Seattle definitely got exposed in terms of some of their deficiencies. And let's call it what it is. The Jimmy Graham trade is a flop. Jimmy Graham, 3 receptions, 22 yards. He's been a virtual no-show for most of his career in Seattle. And then you have to take into account the fact that you lost out on this guy, Max Unger, because that's who you let go in order to get Jimmy Graham on board. And your offensive line has not been the same since he departed. If your offensive line ain't the same, it's going to affect your running game, which we saw by Thomas Rawls only rushing for 34 yards. The absence of beast mode, which is also an identity crisis. And then you combine that with the fact that it puts more heat under Russell Wilson, and you've got some dude named Paul Richardson who can play, but Paul Richardson with Doug Baldwin and a suspect Jimmy Graham, it just doesn't seem that you have much in the degree of potency on the offensive side of the ball. Then we go to defense. You've got a situation where you got 2 corners that are questionable. Richard Sherman did not have a good day, obviously. They were targeting him. They were getting at him. They were getting the better of him to some degree. But what I saw was a frustrated Richard Sherman that was just out there being a professional and trying to do his job, as opposed to being a rough rider who really, really wanted it. His frustration seemed to have elevated, and I think that affected him to some degree. So we got that going on. Then we look at a guy, Earl Thomas, being out. Then we look at guys arguing with one another to the point where Cam Chancellor has to go out there afterwards and talks about how every time we argued about the officials, every time we argued about something is when we've suffered and when we've lost. They seem to have lost their identity. Doesn't mean they can't get it back, but they don't seem to be the same team that they once were.
I want to address the diagnosing the Seahawks for a second, because you're right, that Max Unger trade, if they could redo it, I hope they would, especially in the modern NFL where diagnosing the defense and communication and everything is so much more important, I think, than it's ever been. You have a center who can play. You may not want to disrupt that just to get another pass catcher, which is essentially what they did when they traded him for Jimmy Graham. But this goes to the Seahawks philosophy. Those who are thinking maybe the window's closing, whatever, you got a great quarterback, you got a great coach, you still got a great defense. I think they're fine. But they're in a league with finite resources because of a hard salary cap. Their philosophy seems to be we're going to not spend much resources, meaning draft picks or money on the offensive line, hope over time and continuity and all those stuff, and coaching, they'll get better and better. I think they're going to have to start devoting some resources there because that, yes, the Earl Thomas injury, killed it for them ultimately. But that, more than anything, was the weakness with the team this year. They couldn't get a running game going. They couldn't protect Russell Wilson, and that's because they don't devote resources to their O-line. I think they're going to have to start to do it.
They're going to have to start to do it because they have to value Russell Wilson. He's your franchise player. You got to take care of him, and the best way to take care of him is by making sure you take care of that offensive line. Because believe it or not, Dak Prescott is a beneficiary of Tony Romo, because Tony Romo was the one who initially insisted to Jerry Jones, you got to buffer that offensive line and get me some help. And now Dak Prescott benefits from it. Ezekiel Elliott has benefited from it. If there's anything that the Dallas Cowboys can teach you on a day like today, where their losing tendencies have reaped yet again, here's the bottom line. You look at that. Yes, it is. You look at them and you say, okay, one of the things that I need to do is buffer my offensive line at every opportunity. Because if I have an offensive line, chances are I'm going to have a decent running game, I'm going to have a decent passing attack, and I'm going to be able to protect my quarterback and ensure his longevity. None of those issues are working beneficially to Russell Wilson right now.
You said, real quick, you said bad Seahawks. Here's my question, because we know it's at least good Falcons. Is this good Falcons or great Falcons? Because I'm this close to saying great Falcons.
Well, they're so fun to watch.
Close ain't there yet. Close ain't there yet. The Atlanta Falcons made it to an NFC Championship game a few years back when they lost to San Francisco. Let's find out.
This is a different team.
I understand that. We will find out Sunday. This is a different team. This is a different team. And then they go Sunday and stink up the joint.
By the way,
let's find out.
Falcons in the NFC, Raiders in the AFC next year. Those are the teams everyone's going to be watching.
Next year, we'll get to next year. Let's see what the Falcons do this Sunday.
Yeah.
Let's see what they do.
They just did something pretty good.
Rise up, Falcons fans. He's starting to get on my nerves.